Professionally, as Andrea said, I'm a sports policy expert and industry vet. I've had a career in sports, working in college sports, pro sports, in sports policy. And I traded that in, if you will, to pursue a PhD in sport management. So right now I'm a first year doctoral student at the University of Massachusetts, and I'm studying sport management really with a focus on advancing equity in and through sport. And so I'll talk probably a lot about sport and about equity. But like for me, these things go hand in hand. I think about equity in sport because we know that there's inequity in sport and we need to change it. I also talk about equity through sport because I actually think that fixing equity in sport, like, it matters, but it really only matters insofar as we're using sport as a vehicle to promote social change out of sport, to have much greater impact than what is happening between the lines of a court. And so on the one hand, I think that what I do, like I just said, like, really does tell you a lot about who I am. It's been my passion since I was 13. It's been informed by all kinds of experiences before then and since then. But also, I was talking with Andrew before, and I don't really think that's what this podcast is about, is like, what do I do for work? And so other things that are important to me or who make me who I am. I grew up in Arizona. I'm a runner, an advocate, a feminist. I'm queer/not straight, which for me is just as much about the gender of the people I date as it is about kind of my own experience with not really feeling so attracted to so many people. And so I don't use the label asexual, but those are experiences that resonate. I'm active in the Jewish community. I like musicals. My family is important to me, but I'm an adult child of divorce, so family is complicated. And just like kind of in the interest of stretching myself and things I don't really normally talk about, but if you're not going to talk about it on Bridges of Belonging, where are you going to talk about it? I think like mental health is super important. So if you see me fidgeting over here a little bit, I've got some kind of muscle Tourette's type tics and ADHD and things that make life really interesting and challenging and beautiful, and a lot of things that I'm still kind of figuring out. So that's me, what I do professionally and why that is important to me. And then all the other things I do outside of those hours.
So for a few of you that don't know me, name's Richard Peter. Originally from the Coast Salish tribe here in Canada, Vancouver Island, BC. I guess sort of a bit about me and that I got injured. I'm a Paralympic athlete. I got injured as a young child, and so I grew up with my disability all my life. But that really didn't change much in regards towards mainly my family, and they've really pushed me to stay involved in sport. And so that's what I've always done. I'm a sport for life kind of guy. And I think that's what I try to do now too, that I try to help promote anybody, whether you have a disability or not, to get out there and be active and enjoy as much sports as possible. And of course, not that you have to reach for that gold medal, reach for the stars, but just to get out there and enjoy. That's what I try to promote. I never really talk about my Paralympic background. I just say, no, I enjoy sports in any kind of means, I guess, whether it be basketball, badminton, hand cycling, tennis, just any kind of activity. I would just say, oh, let's get out there and have a good time. Maybe it's great that that's where I live here in Vancouver, BC, that I've got a lot of opportunities for those different sport outlets. And so I try to get out there and enjoy it as much as possible. And I think that's what I try to promote when I do talk to somebody who's either newly injured or newly introduced into parasports, is to enjoy it first. And then if you do have more further aspirations of making the Paralympic team or going higher and higher, and just say, all right, well, that's when you can start the focus. But first off is just to enjoy it. And I guess, so that's what I always try to promote. When I first got involved into parasport, I chatted with the executive director of BC Wiltshire Sports, and we sat down, and she sort of mainly asked me the same questions that are, what are your goals, or what do you want to achieve outside of sport? And a few things that she did write down. I was surprised that she wrote the 5 things down and said, all right, what do you want to focus on? And then she showed me, I think 20 years later, and said, oh, here, you did sort of achieve a lot of that stuff. And so that was pretty wild. And mainly for me, because I've gotten a lot of assistance into me, ended up where I am here today, that I always try to give back. So, coming back from a First Nations background, it was, we've always had a love of sports on many different levels. And so um, that's always been a part of my life. And then sport, that's always been, hand in hand there. That's where I've always grown up, and that's what our family's always done. And then once I got involved into parasport, that just sort of again combined, whether it be the para world, disabled community, and getting involved into sport again. So that opened many more doors for me. And so that's, we of course didn't have any financial funds as my family to, get some of these sports chairs and equipment that which do get pretty expensive. And so I've always had a lot of assistance in finding chairs and finding equipment, traveling to different events. And so there's always been loads of support that I've had from my community, my family, from the para sport world. And so it's always been, I've always been very thankful for that. And that's where I sort of complete that circle, that I'm always there trying to help, any new athlete or anybody else that's getting involved or just newly injured, from working at the rehab center here in Vancouver, that I meet a lot of newly injured clients that are coming through there. So I'll just try to, say, all right, yes, this is a very traumatic injury that you've just encountered, but, life still can go on. And whether, you enjoy it with sport or just getting back into life, getting back into school. And so I always just try to, I guess I always say, complete that circle and try to bring it back and say, yes, today is a very tough day, but it gets brighter and gets a bit easier. And I think for me, that's I've been very thankful that I could still continue on and play sports and just enjoy it as much as I can. So I think that sort of really combines a bit of my First Nations background involved in sports, and then in the para world, that's really continued on and helped me open so many more doors. And so it's got me to where I am today. Yeah.
I do think, right, like for as many times as I felt like I don't really belong, I've been really lucky to find spaces where I do really belong, and they're so powerful to be in those types of communities with those people. A lot of times I've had to create them for myself, like create the community that I want and need and invite others into them with me. And that is so fulfilling. It's also like utterly exhausting. Other times I've been really lucky to find community, sometimes in really unsuspecting places. And when I take a step back and I think about like what made that a place where I found community, sometimes, I go and I look for community, I look for belonging somewhere because I think, oh, I'm definitely going to find it. I remember, in undergrad, I like went to the Hillel because I really wanted Jewish community, and it was like really not my place, right? And I found community in places on campus I never would have dreamed would have become my places. And I think I've had experiences like that as I've moved from different cities. Things I thought I was going to want and find and need, I didn't find, but I found something else. And when I take a step back and I look at like, well, what did these things actually offer me? It's interesting because they, at like the granular level, they were offering the same thing, the things I needed. It just showed up in a different package. So just, one story of one particular place that I found belonging more recently, that I kind of stumbled into a community that was so special. And so thanks to the Schusterman Foundation, which is a foundation based here in the US and does a lot of work in Israel as well. I spent 10 days in Israel on a trip with sport industry leaders. And I don't even know how to convey just how special that time was. We were such a diverse group, like by gender, by race, by religion, by age, by disability, by nationality, like so much diversity, and yet like such a powerful community. And I think a lot about the last night of the trip when some of us stayed up throughout the entire night in just this beautiful space, watching the stars and then watching the sun come up on the other side of it. And in the course of that night, we had really hard conversations about hard stuff, about racism, about sexism and sexual harassment and assault, and about prejudice and injustice. And people were sharing their real stories. And at least personally, I can say like I don't have a lot of positive experiences of talking about sexism in mixed gendered settings. Like those tend to be, in my experience, rather frustrating. I don't feel heard or seen. I tend to leave feeling pretty invalidated. But like this crew on this night, like people listened intensely and they honored people's truths and they asked questions from a place of wanting to understand, right? like not wanting to adjudicate, are you really telling me what happened? But like, I want to understand more about what this was like for you. And I hope that when others shared, when people of color spoke about their experiences with racism, and when others shared about their experiences with prejudice in other ways, that they felt the same. And I kind of think that people did, that just like this ability to speak your truth, and to hear it, as for others to witness it, hear it as true, be validated, and supported in that moment was so special. And that was like the pinnacle of these 10 days of this community that, for all of its diversity, I think sometimes we can think about like, when to belong, we need to be with other people who are just like us. Um, and for all the diversity that this group brought, there was like so much community and belonging.